Hello there, it's Cassie. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I have 5 cards, 1 kit using the Brutus Monroe May 2020 inspiration box called Saltwater Taffy. As far as I know, this box is still available, so I will have that linked down below. So let's go ahead and get started with our first card. I'm going to use one of the panels, but before we get started on one of those foilable panels, we are going to stamp out our images. And I'm going to grab out my Giganto Misty, just because this paper I didn't want to cut it down, and this just works fine. So we're going to put in the images that we plan to use, kind of trying to line that up just a little bit. And this is like one of the boardwalk pieces. The word's escaping me what it actually is, but it's like a little tower. So I'm going to stamp that a couple times using some Raven Detail ink. And then I'll clean that off and I'll pull in the boardwalk stamp and just kind of decide where I want that. And then I will pull in the tower one more time, kind of trying to line that up as well, make it as straight as possible. And then we're going to ink that up a couple times with the same ink and stamp that down. And then when we have that good and how we want it, we're going to pull in the boardwalk stamp and we'll actually stamp it this time. I'm not that concerned whether or not that actually touches where I want it to touch, because that is an easy fix. So I'll ink it up a couple times and you'll notice that it won't actually touch either one of those towers, which is no big deal. We'll fix that with a pigment pen. So I'll pull that out and I'll just grab one of my pigment pens that I have. And any black pen would probably work, because I'm not going to do some Copic coloring on this. I'm just going to do some ink blending. But then we're going to actually start cutting that out. And if I had been thinking at the time, I wouldn't have cut it out. And I actually realized this about halfway through the cutting. And the reason I want to wait is because I want to do ink blending. And there are some parts of that that are a little bit intricate. And sometimes when you're ink blending, you can get a little bit vigorous with it. And in turn, that can bend your pieces if you're not careful. So it's at this point I'm like, ooh, I should probably wait to finish cutting the rest of it. And let's just start with our ink blending. I've got some yellow, pink, and purple inks up here, and I'm going to grab one of my VIVACE Beauty brushes after I trim down just the bottom portion of my stamped image, and we're going to start ink blending. I'm going to start with some of that yellow down at the bottom of our panel, and I just figured this would be a little bit easier because I can either darken it or lighten it the way I want, just depending on how much pressure that I put down. And so then I'm going to line up my boardwalk piece and do the same thing, because these are going to overlap each other. It doesn't make sense now because it's not cut out, but it will make sense here in a bit. Then we'll move on to our lighter pink, and that'll be in the middle. And you can tell it's kind of splotchy with the way I'm putting that ink on there, but it'll end up evening itself out a little bit, and I will blend a little bit more over the top once I get the purple put on. So once I'm happy with that, I'll pull in the boardwalk stamp and do that same thing. Just ink blend all over that. And then I'll go ahead and bring in the purple before I cut out my panel. And this is where it starts to look really splotchy, but then I bring in more pink and even that color out just a little bit more. These panels are good for foiling. My plan was to foil one. I didn't get an opportunity to do that, but I'm going to try and do that maybe in a little bit. I just really wanted to get these cards made before I headed out on my little mini camping trip. All right, so we're going to finish fussy cutting out the boardwalk, and I'll cut out the entire thing, and you'll see what we're left with. And it's at that point I decide I need a little bit of purple on the top of that as well. For our sentiment, we're going to stamp just part of the sentiment. So I'm just inking up part of that sentiment with the embossing ink that says "Enjoy the." And that stamp itself says "Enjoy the ride," but I just want "Enjoy the," and I'm going to use a paintbrush to wipe off any of the excess powder, because obviously, as you can tell, I'm doing some heat embossing. This is on some Raven cardstock. And then I'm going to bring in the word vacation. So I thought this would be fun. Enjoy the vacation. This background just kind of made me think of almost like the Magic Kingdom a little bit. So we'll stamp vacation, and then we'll heat set that, and then we'll trim that down. If you hear some jingle bells, it's because the cats have lost their minds. All right, I did go ahead and trim down my panels themselves, And so my card base is some Not Your Mama's Heavyweight cardstock. I'm going to ink up the Ferris wheel from this stamp using some of that pink ink. And we're just going to stamp that on the inside. Stamp it a couple times. And then I did, with the trimming down of the yellow cardstock, that's the cardstock that came in the kit, I did have a couple pieces that were small, and I thought those would be really nice to put on the inside. So I'm using my T-ruler and a glue pen, and I'm just going along the glue pen so that I have a nice straight line to tack down my piece of yellow cardstock. And then I'll do the same thing with the smaller piece just right above it. And I do apologize if I sound really stuffy. I'm telling you, my allergies, I've said it a million times, they're kicking my tail, and it just doesn't seem to be getting better even with taking stuff. So, all right, we're going to move on to attaching our panel down to that yellow cardstock panel that we cut down. And I just have that just a little bit of yellow on the outside of it. And then I did cover my boardwalk piece with some foam tape. I wanted that to look like it's really standing out from the rest of the background. And I also put some foam tape on the back of our sentiment, and I'll attach that down as well. Our yellow piece of cardstock is even a little bit smaller than our card base, which measures, I want to say it's about 5 1/4 by or maybe a little over 5 1/4 by a little over 4 inches. And so there's just a tiny little white border, tiny little yellow border, and then we have our card panel, which was ink blended. And I really love how this looks. This would be fun to hand to somebody, maybe, or send to somebody who you know is headed to Disney World or something. How fun would that be? For card number 2, I'm going to cut down that gorgeous glitter stock that came in the kit. And I'm cutting that down to be 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches, so it will be the whole front of an A2 size card. I'm going to take one of my circle foundation dies and cut that right out of the middle. And the reason I'm going to cut it right out of the middle is because this glitter stock is going to be one of my back pieces, and I need a circle, and I don't want to waste the glitter stock. So this is just a perfect way. It's going to be hidden behind another panel of cardstock, and so you won't be able to tell that a hole was cut right out of the center. And I wanted that circle for like a back piece or a mounting piece for what I'm actually cutting out. So that's just an easy little tip, quick little way to save your glitter stock without having to use it all up. Next, I'm going to stamp the word boardwalk all over the left-hand side of a piece of the blue cardstock that came in the kit. I cut this down to be 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches, so it'll be a little bit smaller than our glitter stock piece. And I'm doing 2nd generation and 3rd generation stamping just for a little bit of interest. This is only just supposed to be part of the background, so it's not like it's supposed to be perfect. It doesn't even need to necessarily be perfectly straight. It's just what I needed. The next thing I want to show you are these little faux saltwater taffy pieces that I made. So I cut down that wax tissue paper that came in the kit and just did a little squares. And all I'm doing is kind of rolling it, and then I'm going to take my thumbs and hold the piece in place, and then I'll take my right hand, because I'm right-handed, and twist the other side. So it's really easy. It just makes it kind of look like a little piece of candy, but it's flat, which is nice, because obviously I want to put this on the front of my card. And then I'm going to take the cotton candy Aqua Pigment that came in the kit, and I'll just put it right on the center and take a paintbrush and spread that around. And then I'm going to take my heat gun and dry that paint, because the paint itself, I mean, it'll take some time to dry on there, which is fine. And it's not like that's watercolor paper, but that's just kind of sitting on there. So I'm going to just heat set that till that is dry. I went ahead and stamped out my images onto some cardstock, and I'm just going to color these in with some alcohol markers. I love the cart because you can add different sentiments to it, like I have saltwater taffy, and then I have the Your Sweet down at the bottom. I also stamped out the little bucket of saltwater taffy, because obviously, since I made little saltwater taffies, we've got to have the saltwater taffy bucket. And I'm just bringing in just some lighter shadowing and shading in there. Nothing too fancy. It's just to add a little bit of interest to the cart. I just love that you can customize this cart to be however you want it, with like the candied apples or popcorn or cotton candy, or like this case, saltwater taffy. Next, I'll color the bucket and just add a little bit of gray to that, and then I'll color the tires. I'm not using a black, I'm just using a W6 and an 8 for those, just to make sure that they're good and dark. And then I'm going to show you how you can use the aqua pigment on paper like this. Even though this isn't a watercolor paper, you can use it full strength onto your paper just fine, as long as you're not adding a bunch of water. Keep in mind this is a wet medium, and this paper that I'm using isn't designed for wet mediums in particular, but you can get away with it because if you just don't add a bunch of water to it. You notice I'm not adding any water. I am just picking it up with my little paintbrush, and I am just painting. So yeah, this medium itself, because I'm also not using a lot of it, it won't pill the paper this way. So I'm feathering it in on those signs, keeping it nice and dark on the edges, and then feathering in towards, and then I'll color the little saltwater taffy as well. But that cotton candy aqua pigment is so cool. I did fussy cut everything out, and so I'm going to put the little bucket inside the cart, and then we're going to start attaching pieces. So I'll use my liquid glue to attach down my blue panel down to the glitter stock, and I'm going to push it all the way to the left-hand side, just for a little bit of interest. And then we're going to attach this down to our card base, which is, once again, some of your Not Your Mama's heavyweight cardstock. And that'll take up the whole front of that A2 size card. And then we're going to glue down our circle, our glitter stock circle, and I am going to have some of that hanging off the side because I want to cut that off. I'm going to put some foam tape on the back of my cart, and we'll attach that down over the top of our glitter stock circle, and then I'm going to use the liquid glue to attach down our little faux saltwater taffy. So you could make all different colors. If you had other kinds of aqua pigments or other colors, you could absolutely do that. So, and I'm using a stamp block to hold those down, because, you know, they have a little bit of dimension, but these will mail easy because it's just paper. No big deal there. And then that is going to finish off the card, but I do end up adding later on, after the fact, I add some of the sequins that came in the kit. I don't know what I was thinking. I forgot they were there, I guess. So there it is, and now you'll see it with the sequins added on. They just match that glitter stock so perfectly. For card number 3, I'm going to use that deliciously wonderful popcorn die, and I've already cut it out of white, and I actually cut it out just the top of some of the yellow cardstock that came in the kit. I'm going to grab out this Tombow marker that I have because it has a bullet nib. This is the Tombow marker number 856, and I am just going to use the die as a guide because I wanted those stripes on there, and it does emboss them a little bit, but I really wanted to make sure these were good. And if you don't have a bullet nib, you can use your brush, because I'm doing it here on the part that says fresh and crisp. And then I'll pull that away and you'll see it actually looks really cool. So I'm also going to use the marker on the flag. This is part of the die cut itself. And then I'm going to pull the die away and you'll see that it actually looks like a popcorn bag, which is so cool. I'm going to pop out all the little popcorn pieces. You could leave those in, but I want to add the yellow to it, which doesn't really look yellow on the screen here. It looks more white to me. But I'm going to flip this over and cover the back with some washi tape. This is just an easy way to put all those inlays back in there. And I'll do that over the popcorn piece as well. So I'll peel out that last little bit and trim it down how I want. If you wanted something a little bit more permanent, you could probably use like masking tape, or Scotch tape would work fine too, I think. But I just had washi tape handy, and so this works well enough. And then I'll take my pieces and I'll put those back in there. I do have the little top of the flag, and you'll see I have a heck of a time. I'm trying to color it red, and every time I touch it with the marker, it goes flying. I end up getting it figured out, and so I'll use my tool to pick it up and put it in there. And then I'm going to just stick the popcorn right over the top and use the back of my tool to push all those little pieces of popcorn right down into the die where they belong. And then I'll use my hands to push it the rest of the way. And then we have this awesome popcorn die. So cool. I'm going to be using this again. So I have 2 of them because I wanted to use 2 of them on the front of a card. I'm trimming down some cardstock. Again, I've got my card base as some Not Your Mama's heavyweight cardstock. That first piece was like 1.5 inches, and that second piece was like 2.5 inches. And then I have a red piece that I just is random, and it will fit the whole front of a card. Not the whole front, but the part that I need. And all I'm taking is the word popcorn, and I'm stamping that with some red dye ink all over that piece of cardstock. And you'll notice that I have some gaps in there, so I'm going to just fill in those gaps with popcorn as well. And now I want to eat popcorn. Oh, movie theater popcorn. I miss that. All right, anyway, I digress. So I'll just stamp that all in the middle, and then I'm going to attach that down to my card base with some liquid glue. And it's okay that they're not perfect. This is just to add a little bit of interest to the background. And then I'm going to use some fun foam. I cut this down to be a little bit smaller than those white pieces that I cut, and I'll just attach those with some liquid glue. And then I will attach those to the front of my card, covering that top and bottom piece with that same liquid glue. So we'll adhere this down, and we've got it nice and popped up with some dimension, which is cool. And then we have that recessed red in the background. I'm going to stamp the word happy birthday, which if I had been thinking would have done that ahead of time, but I stamped happy birthday with the Raven Detail ink. I'm going to trim down a little bit more foam to fit behind there because my popcorn's going to overlap the top and the bottom white piece. And then this will just make sure that those pieces don't like collapse in the middle. So I'll cover the backs with liquid glue. And then I'll have one more tiny little piece that I cut down of fun foam and stick that back there as well. And then once again with our popcorn bag, I just love that die. It's so cool. And then I'm going to attach down some of the sequins that came in the kit, just using some liquid glue. I'm using silver and I'm using some of the like bronze colored sequins. I thought those would be fun to mix up the colors just a little bit. And then when we are done attaching all of those to the front, that's going to finish off our card. Love how this one turned out. It's kind of simple, but it's just neat. For card number 4, I have a piece of watercolor cardstock that I have cut down to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. And I have used my ruler to just kind of line up the roller coaster because I do plan to try and connect it. So I'm inking that up with some Raven Detail ink. And I am stamping on the textured side of this watercolor paper, so I do need to stamp it a couple times, but it only takes twice, and it's stamped out really, really nicely considering the amount of detail that is in that stamp. So I do like the ink a lot for those reasons. And then I line it up again, and I'll do the exact same thing, and this way it looks a little bit more like a continuous roller coaster just across the bottom of my cardstock. You'll notice I have that white gap at the bottom because I use my ruler, and I'll show you here what I plan to do with that. I'm going to just use some little tape to block off where the roller coaster is, and then take my Raven Detail ink and put that all across the bottom. I want it to just be a blackened bottom, and you could just put cardstock there if you didn't want to use the ink. And now I'm going to come in with some of the Aqua pigments, which is why I chose to use watercolor paper, and this is the cotton candy that came in the kit, and it's a little bit different than the regular Aqua pigments. In my mind, even if you look at the bottle, it looks like it's a little bit more opaque. And oh my gosh, I love it. So my guess, I don't have any of the creamy Aqua pigments, but my guess is that it might be a little bit like those. I could be wrong, so don't quote me on that. But if that is the case, I'm definitely going to have to get some of those creamies because I just love how these mixed. And so the next color that I used was just some yellow, and then I'm bringing in turquoise. And you guessed it, I'm trying to get them to mix a little bit to make a rainbow, and I just love how these mix. So there's that beautiful green that the yellow and the turquoise are going to make, and then our cotton candy and our yellow make this really beautiful creamy orange, and then all I'm doing is splattering and adding more water, trying to make it look a little bit organic. So I'm bringing in just a little bit of water. You notice I put the Aqua pigment right onto the paper. There was really, it wasn't necessary for me to put it on the glass mat and then bring it to the paper, which you could do that as well, but because I used watercolor paper, it wasn't a big deal. I want to add a little bit more of the turquoise, and so I'll, like I said, try and make that look a little bit more organic, almost like it was splattered on there and they just mixed together on their own. I'll bring in a little bit more cotton candy just because I'm really digging that color. And then, mix those just a little bit more, but you can notice that cotton candy is a little bit more opaque than the yellow and the turquoise are. But I love how this is just panning out. It just looks so pretty. And who doesn't love a rainbow, am I right? Oh my gosh. All right, so I'm going to heat set that. I'll get those to dry. And then once that is dry, we're going to come in with some Pearl Aqua pigment. And I have this just into a little mini mister bottle that I have diluted with a little bit of water. So I've taken the cap off and I'm just splattering that all over the background so I can get some of those Pearl Aqua pigment splatters as well. I'm going to stamp my sentiment on some white cardstock, trim that down, and then I will adhere that to the front of my card panel and attach that to a card base. And then there is card number 4. I think this one is just gorgeous, and I love how that one turned out as well. Our 5th and final card for the day is a slimline card. I'm going to take the popcorn bag that came in the kit, one of them, and I'm going to trim it down just a little bit. You'll notice that I already have one of the little carts all cut and colored. I figured you already watched me color one once before. You'll notice I have popcorn stamped up at the top, and then I have thank you a couple of times. This is going to be a slimline thank you card. So I'm going to just continue trimming down this popcorn bag to get out the pieces that I want from it, just using my guillotine trimmer. And then when I have the pieces I need, I'm also going to grab out a circle die, and I'm going to cut that out of the back of the popcorn bag. And then I'll start adhering all those pieces to my lunch bag card base. Now this is a slim line, so I cut it to 7 inches by 8.5 inches, scored it at 3.5. So, and there isn't really a set measurement for a slimline card, but you just have to check your envelopes and see what would work in there. All right, and then now I'm going to adhere down the circle, and then I'll adhere down my little popcorn cart, and then we'll trim off all of the excess, just using the guillotine trimmer. That way I can make sure everything is good and straight. And then we'll work on the inside in a second. There's so many elements to this kit, and there's so many things I want to show you guys, but it's like I run out of time, and so I'm going to show you the stencil here. I'm going to just go ahead and I'm going to just use some embossing ink and give it a watermark look, and so we'll have the carousel on the inside. But I've already seen some people just do some incredible things with this carousel stencil. It's so pretty. And then I'll just take a couple more pieces from the popcorn bag and just glue those onto the inside just to add some cohesion from the outside to the inside. I love that. But yeah, I always have so many ideas for these kits, and I can't ever get them all done. Otherwise, these videos would be like an hour plus long. So you get a few cards. You get about 5. And I did tack down some of the sequins that came in the kit, and that's going to finish off our 5th card. So let's go ahead and take a look at all the cards I did make for you today. I would love to know which one was your favorite. If you did in fact have a favorite, go ahead and list that down in the comment section. I just want y'all to know how much I appreciate all the love and support that you guys give me. You guys are incredible, from your commenting, your liking, subscribing, using my affiliate links, which that helps me so much. Y'all are just incredible. So thank you so much for stopping by, and I will see you very soon in another video. Bye, everybody.